So building 0 to 1, of course, is like as a PM, you super interesting, right? You feel like you get a lot of freedom and you feel very important because you are getting to design something from scratch. So it feels like all the great things are coming together. But it also comes with a lot of challenges that we often don't talk about. So in the practical sense, I will emphasize on the challenges rather than talk about the nice parts about building a 0 to 1. So one of the biggest challenges is when you're building a 0 to 1, the scope is insanely wide. Like when we started thinking about building Instamart, or rather when Swiggy started thinking about going beyond food, we knew it was going to be grocery, but beyond food is still like crazy wide, right? What does that do you mean? Like even saying grocery is crazy wide. Are you talking about grocery in the gourmet section? Are you talking about everyday grocery? Are you talking about opening a big bazaar? What are you talking about? Is so reducing that and figuring out what is that you're exactly going after. That is one big thing. The second big thing, which is very related, is when you're building a 0 to 1 within a company, while the company serves maybe 15 types of users, there are some power users, then there are some non-power users, but like with very, very different personalities, right? The user and the use case you are going after, you have to define it very strongly. And a great outcome is actually if the MVP of your 0 to 1 only solves for 10% users. Because if it is solving for more than 10% of the company's existing base, if you are working in a big enough company, then it is most likely solving for no one. And that is 1 0 to 1 that will definitely not work. So you want to very sharply define the user and the use case you are going after. The next challenge that comes in is aligning everyone on what you are building. So like I said, because it's a 0 to 1, it can be defined in so many different ways. What often happens is everyone, especially in the leadership, would have a very different version of the product that they're envisioning. Most likely, the end goal is very similar, the end vision is very similar, but the first step in that vision is very different. So everyone is trying to get to the same place, but someone is starting here, someone is starting here, someone is starting here. And as the product person building the 0 to 1, it is your responsibility to align everyone and make sure that everyone is clear on what we are doing. So in case of Instamart, the thing we needed to align everyone was we are not trying to build a big basket competitor. Eventually, Swiggy will do all kinds of grocery, and that's great. But day one answer is not building an offline Spencer or an offline Big Bazaar. We are not trying to sell atta at a cheap price. So we are not trying to do any of that. And we are not trying to do that. So defining what we are not doing is as equally important as defining what we are doing. So we are not doing atta, but then what we are doing is we definitely want to solve for getting iSetware. So we were trying to build the equivalent of a 7-Eleven for India. And even saying the equivalent of 7-Eleven for India is too broad, right? What does that mean? The equivalent of 7-Eleven for India is sort of between the kirana that a 30-year-old today wants to go to in India. So we had to think about fruits and vegetables, but also think about like party things and the kind of products and categories a 30-year-old will be interested in a metropolitan city in India. So yeah, to summarize, I would think a lot when building 0 to 1, the biggest challenge is on defining scope, making sure that you are not going too broad trying to solve for everyone. What you want to do is actually solve for a very specific audience, understand their needs deeply, and only solve for them at the cost of actually not building a product that a lot of people can use, with the vision of eventually getting there. And as you go sharply in defining this audience in your docs, in your product requirements, be ruthless in terms of what features need to be built, because you are building an MVP. And being in a big company, it can feel very tempting to build a bigger product and not just build a small thing, because you're like, hey, we are building a 0 to 1, but we represent this big company, so don't fall into that trap. Figure out what are the basic standards you would want to maintain in terms of design and product quality, but you don't need to overload it with features. And the next more important thing is making sure that everyone is aligned and everyone is clear on what you're building, because it is very, very easy for different people to have different views of the future. Thank you for joining me in this session today of pottery and product. Let me know what do you think of it in the comments. If you have more questions, I would love to answer them. Yeah, thank you so much.